All right, so we're going to get into today's training around, feeling ignored by federal buyers. And sometimes we do feel ignored by federal buyers, right? And what I want you to understand is that perhaps they're not really ignoring us, right? And when you think about that, is it them ignoring us or them ignoring you, right? Or is there something more behind that? And I think there are a lot of things that are behind it. I'm going to talk about some of it today and give you tactical tips for how you can address it. But a couple of things that are important when you think about whether a buyer is ignoring us or not. Part of it could be just your lack of awareness of how they go out and look for vendors, right? How to properly market your company to the federal buyer so they can see you and not ignore you unintentionally. Second thing is buyers definitely have, federal buyers have limited time and resources. You probably have heard this everywhere. You probably experienced this yourself, right? You have less money and less time to do more things that you have to get done. And so federal buyers are no different. And you need to make it easy for them to be able to find you. Gus Phelps, who works with me, colleague here in the training, talks about how we want to remove friction between us and our customers. And so when you think about limited time and resources those federal buyers have, anything you can do to make it easy for them to find you, et cetera, is going to be better. And it increases your chances that they do not ignore you. The last thing is when you think about this, federal, or not just federal buyers, but people buy from those they know, like, and trust, right? And what I want you to do is to help make this happen, not sit around and wait for them to know, like, and trust you, right? Don't wait for it to happen, but make it happen. And when I talk about making it happen, think about what it would take to help your federal buyers know, like, and trust you and your company. I've done 1,000 trainings, pretty close to literally, but I've done well over 500 trainings in this particular topic about how to get buyers to know, like, and trust you. And you can go back and look at those as you begin to build that activity. But just remember, in this know, like, and trust world, you need to make that happen. Don't wait for it to happen. And that's one way you can kind of drive towards helping them not ignore you. And immediate steps you can take are the ones I want to share today about being more visible, etc. Okay, let me share my slide. I got my screen sharing today. I think we're good. So let's go ahead and help you not get ignored by federal buyers by talking about why federal buyers might not be calling you back. And I'm going to give you some tips on how you can fix that. In today's training, I want to break it down into 3 sections. First thing I want to talk to you about is just sales and your sales approach. We described that sales as basically inbound and outbound sales. And I want to talk to you about the difference and understand the activity that's in there. And that's kind of the how. The who is the second bullet I want to cover. It's just for you to really understand how big the federal market is, how many federal buyers and teammates out there that potentially could be trying to find a company like yours. And then the third thing I'm going to wrap up with are specific steps you can take right now to increase the chances of buyers finding your company, decrease the chances that they'll ignore you, even unintentionally, right? And so that's what we're going to cover down on in today's training. If you don't know me, my name is 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗕𝗘. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and now I am CEO and co-founder of GovCon in a Box, which we'll talk a lot more about another day. But I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process, A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. When I talk about repeatable, predictable, that is having buyers being able to find you as well. That is just a process. And how can we make it repeatable and predictable that they'll be able to find you? We're going to cover down a little bit on that. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, Government Contracting Success, go ahead and subscribe for that today. We put out a lot of good information on there, and I'd love for you to be able to track on it. Last thing is I have 4 more trainings this week, so make sure you go register for training. If you registered for today's training, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a small thank you that you do that just lets us know you're coming. LinkedIn then also pushes the word out to more people in the government contracting space. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between outbound and inbound sales. And when you think about this, really it comes down to, do you want to be knocking on the doors of thousands of people? Do you want to go knocking on doors, or do you want to answer a door and say, who is it? Right? So if somebody's knocking on your door, that's inbound sales. If you're knocking on somebody's door, it's outbound sales. That's the short of it. outbound sales, I just put a couple of bullets here to help you understand. But one of the biggest things about outbound sales when it relates to small business government contractors, outbound sales is done by the owners of companies, right? I did this in both of my government contracting businesses. I did the bulk of the sales, right? And it's also done by business developers, capture people who are out there knocking on doors. So it is people going out and knocking on doors. This is called direct outreach. We're literally picking up the phone. We're sending an email. We might be going to conferences, whatever it is, right? We go to vendor outreach sessions that agencies have. That's all outbound because it takes a person to go to it. You have to go do this yourself. It is absolutely cold calling. When you do outbound sales, you don't know the people on the other side. This is your first time calling them every single time. And so that's cold calling. There's a lot of anxiety around that activity, but it is very targeted too. So when you do outbound sales, you put together a list of people you're going to cold call, or what we call outreach, right? You can be very specific and targeted with your outreach activity compared to inbound, which is, you can't control who's coming in. You can control how you react when they come in, big smile, but you can't control who's going to come in on inbound sales. But outbound sales, when I do our workshop, for example, we build a targeted list for our customers, 200 people, let's say, and we're like, we're going after these people. Let's say they're all cybersecurity related, or they're all janitorial services related, et cetera, right? That's cold calling, and enables you to build that target list, pick up the phone and call somebody. Because it is tied to a person, right? There is absolutely a higher cost. You have to go out, you have to be doing this work. You're paying salary, you're paying taxes, you're paying healthcare, all that kind of stuff that comes with having a person do the job compared to what I'll talk about in inbound sales. And the last thing about outbound sales, and if you've done any of this, you totally understand what I'm saying. It requires a heavy amount of activity. It requires your persistence, just constantly following up. I have a whole training and a handout where I talk about how do you get a meeting with an elusive buyer, somebody who's not responding back to you, not landing the meeting. They haven't said no or anything. Well, it just means you have to follow back up 30 times, 60 times. It takes a lot of engagement to get somebody to follow back up with you, to begin to know, like, and trust you, right? And sometimes your emails, et cetera, are just getting buried. So outbound sales requires a lot of persistence. By the way, just so we're clear, I believe in outbound sales and inbound sales. I just want you to understand the difference. Today, we're going to be leaning a lot more on inbound sales. So let's talk about that. If outbound sales is direct outreach, and like I said, you're creating a target list and you're going out there. Inbound sales, it's an indirect outreach activity. You're kind of scattershotting out there and hoping you reach the right people with your activity, and they come knocking on your door. That's the most important thing to remember, is that they're going to knock on your door. I have a customer who's in our workshop, and they updated their information, and they did a lot of inbound activities that we guided them on, and they started getting their door knocked on. I've done a video in the past about how they won a direct award 8A sole source contract. So this is 8A company, right? A little bit different maybe than the average small business, but still, how they won the award is separate from how they got contacted. They did the right things, and inbound sales was where this Department of Energy buyer reached out to them and said, hey, we're doing market research. We'd like to include you and see if there's discussion. And then after that, because we did such a great job, they won the contract, right? But getting contacted is the same for all of us. And this idea of having people knock on the door is really important. If you're not having anybody knock on your door, then you really need to think about what we're talking about today. So inbound sales, I write here that it's customer initiated because they have to come up to your door and knock on your door. You can't go to their door. And so you want to make sure your content and marketing activities are the correct information and correct tips that you're sharing out there. Whatever you're putting it out, you want to be targeting the right people to come back. I sometimes see people who are government contractors, small business government contractors. Their customers are federal agencies, right? But I see them sharing content that I share. But my target customer, if you will, is you. It's a small business government contractor. So I share information I think you would value. What you should be sharing in your marketing material, your content on LinkedIn, et cetera, what you should be sharing is something you think your customer would value. An example is, and I like to use elevator services just because I'm an IT guy and it allows me to stretch. But elevator services, right? If I was doing elevators, and that was my core competency, then I would be putting out content about, top 10 tips for increasing the life of your elevator. So elevators are a thing that go up and down and they have to be replaced every, 10, 20 years or something, right? Same thing. Imagine if you did roofing. Top 10 tips for increasing the life of your roofing. Well, you're not going to attract my attention because I don't really care about that. I don't have roofs or something. But if you're looking at the federal agencies and those buyers are constantly out there trying to learn about how do they do their job, then they're going to turn to your content, your marketing material, and see that as a way for them to become better informed. This is a normal way of doing sales now, where the buyer is so much more informed before they come to you. But the cool part is, by the time they get to you, they might even know, like, and trust you completely because of the content. I have literally had last week, I literally had a customer who said, I don't need a referral. Like they're like, I don't want it. I already know who you and your team are because I come to your trainings. I see your stuff. I just want help doing what you're training us on. And you could be doing that same thing, and it generates leads, right? That's just normal for all of us, is how do we meet the people we want to work with? Those are warm leads compared to cold call in outbound sales. So warm leads are the best leads, whether they're introductions or they already know you from your content. And they come in and say, hey, come talk to me more about your business. And the last thing about this, just to keep in mind, is the cost is much lower. Because especially nowadays, if you do social selling, like I do, where you're putting your information, your tips, etc., out on LinkedIn, it literally costs me nothing but some of my time. But my time was already at cost. And so I could be sitting here doing nothing, answering emails, or I could create a post and put it on LinkedIn once a week or once a day, etc. And because of that, I don't have any additional costs. And so I can keep that cost down. I don't have to hire people to do this. I just share what I know. So that's a quick difference between the inbound and outbound sales, right? Those activities. And you want more of the inbound sales because there is just far too many people for you to be able to talk to on your own, to go out and introduce your company to. Think about this. Like, if you could talk to people every single day consistently, I think, 4 people a day is the max you can get into, because as you do that and you do all this other activity, if you had 4 meetings a day, you'd be maxed out, knocking on doors and actually talking to them, right? And that doesn't even count like trying to call 100 people who don't answer and only 4. I'm just saying, if you had 4 meetings a day times 5 days, that's 20 meetings a week. 20 meetings a week times 50 weeks is 1,000. Let's say you meet 1,000 people in a year. That is on the absolute outside. And even for regular full-time salespeople, that's a push. But that's a drop, like a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of 1% kind of thing, right? It is just a fraction. If you reached out to 1,000 people and had meetings with 1,000 new people, it'd be great, but you'd be super tired, and you'd have a lot of meetings with people who were the wrong ones. They didn't know about your company, so you had to educate them. But look at the numbers I have here, right? In DOD, they put out this information. You can go check it out yourself. But they have over 185,000 acquisition personnel. And this is a really important distinction, because in the federal market, there are people who are in the acquisition contracting officer type, think that way, acquisition related job positions, job descriptions, right? Acquisition related jobs. And then there are all these other people, hundreds of thousands of people, who support the requirement and opportunity that these acquisition people are driving through the acquisition lifecycle. So an example are program office folks, small business professionals, but the people who are responsible for defining the requirements, thinking about the budgeting, right? The contracting officer is not thinking about the budgeting. They're thinking about the acquisition. The program office has to decide, do we have the money? Where are we getting the money from? They have to come with that information decided for the contracting officer. And then there's the execution on the side. So there's all these people involved in the buying process, what I call federal buyers. And they all are doing research at different stages. The acquisition related people are doing it during market research when they're trying to decide, do we set aside the small or not? That's the contracting shop. That's them looking into the market saying, what vendor sources are available. Sources sought is the notice that they put out. But when you think about know, liking, and trusting, those are the program office people who are saying, wow, I got to replace that elevator in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And they're already thinking out there. They're planning out how they're spending money and where they're getting their money from. And it's like, hey, it's really important we do this. On the IT side, there are software products that are in play that are going to be deprecated, meaning they're no longer going to be supported by the vendor, so they no longer can be used on a government network. We know we have to get rid of those in a couple of years. They're already thinking that. And so they're out there on the internet trying to figure out, well, what's the replacement? What do we do next? You want to be out there with all of your marketing and content. You don't have to go crazy, right? If you're a small business, one piece of content a week is more than enough to get visibility as an expert. There's a guy who's in our community all the time, 𝗧𝗢𝗕𝗏, who is a SharePoint guy. And he's constantly putting out SharePoint tips, right? I know many SharePoint companies that are out there. But one of the things I noticed about him is that he's always putting out tips like, here's how you do SharePoint list this way or something. That allows the buyer to look in, learn from him, and then go, well, I have a SharePoint need. Maybe I should call 𝗧𝗢𝗕𝗏, right? And then the same thing with the other agencies that are out there. And then I added in this third bullet. There's over 300,000 government contractors listed in SAM. There's over 300,000 in DSBS, which is just small businesses. But that's a ton of people, right? So if you think about how many folks are out there that potentially might work with you, potentially might want to put you on a team, right? I'm working with customers now where I encourage them to go off and find companies that can win. We literally built a tool, which I'll show you in a minute, just as part of the training, but we literally built a free tool that you could go off and find teammates who have experience or are doing this kind of thing, et cetera. And so there are hundreds of thousands, and I feel like I'm conservative, well over 1 million business development, capture people, proposal managers. There's a ton of people out there. I was working with Boeing a couple of years back, and they were telling me that internally they have 14,000 buyers who, for one reason or another, are buying stuff, working with vendors themselves. That huge multi-billion-dollar organization also has their own needs. And so they have their internal needs plus their subcontracting needs. I just wanted to show you really quickly LinkedIn. If I go into LinkedIn, this is where I can go in quickly. And I just show you, this is only part of how you could do it. But if I just said, show me business, well, here you go. You saw me doing it. So here's business developers, Army. And I know this is a very loose search in here. But if I search business development and Army, I'm looking for people with that kind of role that's in here. Director of Business Development for the Army, Army Solutions at GDIT. This is Henry McNeil, right? I don't know who he is. I don't really care at the moment. But you see there's 51,000 right there, 51,000 people with that role. If I just stick there for 1 second and try, capture management. Right, if I come in here, there's 1,900 who's saying they're doing capture with the Army. If I go back here to business development I thought I had business development for the Navy. Let me just put that in and show you Navy. If I look into the Navy, hey, come on, I'm live here. You got to load faster. Hold on 1 second. Okay, business development. And then what I'm doing in LinkedIn is saying only show me people, not companies. Here's like 30,000 that are doing business development manager for in the Navy here. Director of Business Development, Navy programs. I don't know who these people are, right? Some of them I might be connected with. Business development manager, director of Navy strategy and business development. These are all people who are in a company. I could filter this down a little bit, but you can see already there's like well over 100,000. And I would say there's hundreds of thousands of potential salespeople, business developers, capture people, small business owners, proposal managers who might be trying to build their team and look for you. Okay, so let me move on to give you a couple of tips on what you can do, steps you can take to help buyers find your company. And first off, I just want to congratulate these 4 companies. There's 350,000, a little bit more than 350,000 small businesses that are selling to the government right now. They're in SAM, they're in DSBS, and they're active, right? Out of all of those 350,000, these 4 companies, Graham, Blend, Parabellum, and Lighthouse, they're the 4 that have a perfect score in our new tool where we measure your visibility. You would have thought I hyperlinked that. Oh, I hyperlinked the box. In here, these are the ones with the visibility that's out there. I want you to come take a look at this tool after the training. You can take a look at it. It's govcon.box.com. We just soft launched it last week. Take a look at it. But if I come in here and I'm looking at a company like, let's say, Graham Inc., there they are, perfect score, 100. And actually, let me back up 1 second. So you can see when you hover above it, see a company like this, not calling them out, but they have no capability statement at DSBS. And so it's hard for any of these buyers or other teammates to find them and find out what they do. They could be very good at what they do. On Graham's side, you can see they've got a really good right up here. It tells us what they do and the technical support. And if I come in, I can see their profile. And this is our profile. You can learn more about it in a video I have, a short video on the homepage. But you can see they've got this perfect visibility gap analysis score, visibility score. And this is where I determine what your score is based on your visibility to buyers. So for example, right here, capability statement. So many people don't have something as straightforward as a capability statement. And so as I come through, I can see who they are. I can see some of the people who have already signed up in the tool and are working on it. I can see the contract vehicles they have and some of their experience in USA Spending and DSBS. And this is a full way for me to see your information. This is also how buyers can find your information and other teammates can find your information. And so I want you to get to that 100th score, and I'm going to come back to it in a second. When you come in here and explore, come in here and take a look at it. There's all sorts of, like if I just said cybersecurity, for example, I'm able to see 1,822 companies. I could say, hey, I'm looking for cyber, but I'm looking for an 8A firm, and filter that down. I went from 1,800 to 247. Maybe I'm looking for somebody who's on STARS 3, for example. And so if I hit STARS 3 and I search, I just went from 287 or something down to 82, and it's becoming more and more manageable for me. And I might say, and I haven't done this, but let's say California. There you go. Maybe I'm looking for people in California, and I don't know either one of these companies. Step Ahead's got a pretty good score of 78. But at least there's two companies I can reach out to. I might back up and say, I want to build a list of 20. But definitely come over to govcon.box.com and take a look at it. We've got a lot of good stuff that's out there, and many of our initial tools are free. But the reason I pointed that out is because I want you to be findable and attractive. That's the most important thing for a small business government contractor, to be found by federal buyers. If you don't want federal buyers ignoring you when they're doing market research, then you need to help them find you by being findable and attractive. You have to have that complete DSBS profile. That's a combination of SAM and DSBS. And if you go to govcon.box.com, you'll be able to see exactly, like if I go back here for 1 second, if I come in here and I look at this one and I see the score, if I was this company, I could click on this visibility score and it would show me step-by-step guidance on how to fix it myself. So I don't need you to come back to us in the chamber and GovCon in the box. I'm giving you, we are giving you the exact steps you need to fix it. Like for example, we'll tell you, hey, there's no capability statement. Go upload that, and you become so much more visible. Okay, so make sure that you're in DSBS and your profile looks great first. Then make sure you're in THEIR, their supplier portals. And in there, what I mean by this is make sure that you're in HHS or NASA or Army. They have their own supplier portals where before they go to DSBS, they look inside those supplier portals. I told you to subscribe to my newsletter. Inside of my newsletter, I've got step-by-step articles with videos that show you how to quickly register in 5 minutes or less in each one of these portals so that you can be visible where the federal buyers look for you. Sometimes they're ignoring you because you're not aware of how they search for you. But if you understand that they might first look at their portal and then DSBS, etc., then you stop focusing on creating the best looking website and you start making sure your DSBS and supplier portals look good. The last tip I had here is just capability statement. Make sure you put your capability statement up on LinkedIn. If I just do this again and go back for 1 second, and I say, let me pull up Nina Martin because I'm a fan of hers, and she's got a profile that, let me close these. If I come down and scroll into her profile, There's her capability statement. She's got it right there. So if somebody comes in and they're looking at professional services, administrative services, and they're like, oh, I like what that says, let me keep scrolling down, and they come down, then they will see her capability statement, etc. Okay, so before we wrap up, really, instead of having 3 steps, I was just saying you need to get visible. I want you to understand the difference, and I think you do, of inbound and outbound sales. Inbound is where you just keep answering your own door. Oh, hey, John. Hi, Sally. How can I help you? Right? Here's an RFI response. Sure, I'd like to participate. Sure, I'll talk to you about my core competency, right? So that's inbound, and outbound is you knocking on doors. Both are good, but you want to really massively increase the inbound activity. And the way you do that is get visible. Get visible on DSBS. Go into our tool, GovCon in a Box, and you'll figure that out. If you have questions in GovCon in a Box, there's a question mark at the bottom. I can actually show you really quick. If I go in here, if you're on our tool on any page, down at the bottom, I've got Ask a GovCon question. If you've got any government contractor related question, go ahead and submit it there, and we're answering them as fast as we can. And right now, that's within a few hours of when you submit it. So go ahead and send us a question. And just remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.